Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sarah Slim presenting to you a new episode of our program Newsroom Live. In today's edition, we are going to cover a number of political, economic and sports issues. After this short break, stay tuned. Starting with the political sector, in which President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received General Manager of the Russian Atomic Energy Authority, Rosatom, Alexei Lukhanchov, on Tuesday. The two sides probed construction developments of El Daba nuclear power plant, which is allocated for civil usage. The meeting comes within the framework of the Russian officials' visit to Egypt to sign with Minister of Electricity and Renewable Energy the agreement between Egypt and Russia concerning El Daba nuclear power plant and its regular systems of security. Meanwhile, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on Monday held closed-door bilateral talks with the Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud at the presidential palace in the New Alamein city. Following their meeting, President el-Sisi held a joint press conference with his Somali counterpart as he reiterated Egypt's full support to efforts that aim to reach a national reconciliation in Somalia. The details are in the following report.
President el-Sisi affirms Egypt's support for all efforts aimed at achieving national consensus in Somalia. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received on Monday his Somali counterpart Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud in Al Alamein city. The official spokesperson for the presidency stated that the two presidents held a closed bilateral discussion session followed by expanded discussions that included delegations from both countries to consult on ways to strengthen bilateral relations and developments in regional continental situations. In a joint press conference, President el-Sisi welcomed the Somali president, stressing that his visit to Egypt embodies the deep fraternal ties between Egypt and Somalia. President el-Sisi also noted that their talks included in-depth discussions on bilateral and regional issues as well as the situation in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. He added that they discussed ways to strengthen bilateral relations in light of the joint political declaration signed between the two countries last January. President el-Sisi stated that regarding cooperation in the military and security fields, he and his Somali counterparts affirmed their commitment to continuing coordination within the framework of the military cooperation protocol signed between the two countries in August of 2024. He noted that this aims to support the capabilities of Somali personnel, enhance the role of national institutions in maintaining security and stability, combat terrorist and extremist organizations, and enable the Somali state to extend its sovereignty and control over its entire national territory. The two leaders also discussed Egypt's military and police participation in the new African Union Mission for Support and Stabilization in Somalia, AMISOM, which aims to support national efforts to establish security. President el-Sisi said in this regard, we agreed on the importance of coordination with international partners as part of the international community's responsibility to maintain international peace and security. President el-Sisi praised the Somali president's efforts to achieve national alignment within Somali society, affirming Egypt's full support for all efforts aimed at achieving national consensus in Somalia on various political issues. The Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud expressed appreciation to the President el-Sisi and the Egyptian government for the warm welcome and generous hospitality in the New Alamein city. Sheikh Mahmoud said it is a great honor to stand alongside President el-Sisi in the New Alamein city. He emphasized that his visit to Egypt aims to strengthen the historical ties between Egypt and Somalia. President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud also conveyed the Somali people's appreciation for Egypt's long-standing position and the support it has always provided to Somalia. The Somali president referred to his country's aspirations for partnership and enhanced communication between the Egyptian and Somali governments, as well as for strengthening ties and investment between the private sectors of both countries. The Somali president praised Egypt's experience in institution building, noting that Somalia is well positioned to be a strong partner for Egypt. He also expressed his country's aspiration for further momentum, emphasizing keenness to build an Egyptian-Somali fruitful partnership. President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud expressed his country's anticipation of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's visit to Somalia.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi reaffirmed Egypt's steadfast position in support of Libya and its national institutions, emphasizing the importance of preserving Libyan sovereignty and territorial integrity. President Sisi stressed the need to unify efforts to reach a comprehensive political settlement to the crisis, one that enables holding presidential and parliamentary elections as soon as possible, fulfilling the aspirations of the Libyan people. This came during President Sisi's meeting on Saturday with the Speaker of the Libyan House of Representatives, Aqila Saleh, in the presence of political advisor to the Libyan Speaker, Hamid al-Safi, and Chief of the General Intelligence Service, Major General Hassan Rashid. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Mohammed al-Shinnawi explained that the President reiterated Egypt's commitment to continuing its efforts and coordination with all Libyan and international parties, stemming from Egypt's belief in the necessity of stability in Libya. For his part, the Libyan parliamentary speaker expressed his ultimate appreciation for the Egyptian efforts in supporting Libyan security as a pillar to regain his country's stability. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said Egypt is committed to achieving the objectives of the UN Framework Agreement on Climate and the Paris Climate Agreement. Speaking at the closing session of the 17th BRICS Summit, Madbouli said Egypt had given great weight to developing the healthcare system and medical services during the past years. Earlier, the Prime Minister said the summit in Brazil comes at a time when the world is witnessing intricate and complex crises and challenges amid a remarkable degradation in multilateral action and in the international order efficiency. As part of his participation at the two-day Summit for Emerging Economies on behalf of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the Prime Minister addressed a session on boosting multilateralism, economic and financial affairs, and artificial intelligence. He said developing countries are suffering rising debt, servicing burdens, inflation, and difficulty in access to easy finance for their infrastructure projects. Madbouli asserted that these burdens grew more with the geopolitical conflicts and tensions in the Middle East that led to further challenges, including rising illegal migration and displacement of peoples from their original home countries. Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati held a phone call with his Saudi counterpart, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, where the two top diplomats stressed the importance of Egyptian-Saudi brotherly and historical relations. The phone call came within the framework of continuous consultations between the two countries in various issues, including their keenness on boosting ties in various fields. The two ministers also discussed the latest regional developments, on top of which the situation in Gaza and the current efforts to reach a ceasefire in the Palestinian Strip. They tackled the current context and efforts to maintain the ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Minister of Foreign Immigration and Expatriates Affairs Badr Abdel Ati stressed the importance of enhancing cooperation with the European Union through a comprehensive approach to address the root cause of illegal migration. This came during a phone call Foreign Minister Abdel Ati received from the European Union's Internal Affairs Commissioner Magnus Brunner. Abdel Ati said that migration represents a common challenge between Egypt and the European Union, which draws the need for promoting coordination based on mutual interests with the aim of supporting stability and development efforts in the region. Meanwhile, the foreign minister discussed the economic burdens that Egypt faces in light of its hosting of millions of foreigners, including refugees, migrants, and asylum seekers who receive basic services like Egyptian citizens. Indirect negotiations on a Gaza ceasefire between Israel and Hamas resumed in Qatar on Tuesday as U.S. President Donald Trump pressed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for a deal to end the war. With the talks underway, Netanyahu traveled to Washington for his third visit since Trump's return to power, where the U.S. President on Monday voiced confidence a deal could be reached. The details are in the following report.
Indirect Gaza ceasefire talks resumed in Qatar on Tuesday, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Washington to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump, who expressed optimism about a possible breakthrough. Qatar, a mediator along with the United States and Egypt, said the meetings were focused on a framework for the talks. A Palestinian official close to the talks said indirect negotiations were continuing this morning in Doha, with a fourth meeting being held. The discussions were still focused on the mechanisms for implementation, particularly the clauses related to withdrawal and humanitarian aid. Another official said no breakthrough had been achieved so far and the negotiations were ongoing. Israel and Hamas began the latest round of negotiations on Sunday, with representatives seated in separate rooms within the same building. Netanyahu's trip to Washington is his third visit since Trump's return to office on Monday. Trump expressed confidence a deal could be reached. An Israeli official accompanying Netanyahu to Washington said the proposal under discussion was 80–90% of what Israel wanted. On the ground, Gaza's Civil Defense Agency reported 29 people killed in Israeli strikes across the territory, including 3 children. Meanwhile, 5 Israeli soldiers were killed in combat in northern Gaza, one of the deadliest days this year for Israeli forces in the Palestinian territory. Israeli military correspondents reported the deaths occurred due to improvised explosive devices near Beit Hanun in northern Gaza. Israel's campaign in Gaza has killed at least 57,523 people, also mostly civilians, according to the Hamas-run territory's health ministry.
Welcome back. The White House said that U.S. President Donald Trump's utmost priority is to end the war in Gaza and free hostages held by Hamas. The statement was made ahead of a crucial meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday. Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff will head the Qatar later this week, where Israel and the Palestinian militant group are holding indirect talks. Press Secretary Caroline Levitt held a briefing. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has revoked the Foreign Terrorist Organization designation for Al-Nusra Front, also known as the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, according to a State Department memo filed on Monday, a major step as Washington moves to ease sanctions on Syria. The details to follow.
The United States announced it was revoking its foreign terrorist organization designation of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a group once linked to al-Qaeda that toppled Syria's government in December. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in a statement said, in line with President Trump's May 13th promise to deliver sanctions relief to Syria, Washington is announcing its intent to revoke the foreign terrorist organization designation. An armed coalition led by the leader, Ahmad al-Shara, overthrew then Syrian President Bashar al-Assad last year, ending off a century of rule by the latter's family. Shara took over as interim president, a move that has been cautiously welcomed in Washington, Europe and elsewhere, with historic foe Israel seeking to build ties with the new government. Washington's move formally takes effect on Tuesday and comes after U.S. President Donald Trump's last week formally dismantling his country's sanctions against Syria. As of 2017, HTS claimed control of swaths of the province of Idlib in Syria's northwest and went on to develop a civil administration in the area. In January, after overthrowing Assad's regime, the new authorities announced the dissolution of all armed factions, with some groups being integrated into bodies such as the country's new police force.
2 people were killed in a strike in Lebanon's north that the Israeli military said targeted a Hamas fighter. The Lebanese health ministry said the Israeli enemy strike on a vehicle near the northern city of Tripoli also led to the injury of 3 people. Meanwhile, U.S. envoy Thomas Barak said he was satisfied by the response of Lebanon's authorities to a request to disarm Hezbollah, although warned Lebanon risked being left behind as change sweeps other countries in the region. Israel has warned it will continue continue to strike until Hezbollah has been disarmed, while the movement's leader Naim Qassem said his group wouldn't surrender or lay down its weapons in response to Israeli threats. Two crew on a Liberian-flagged cargo ship died in an attack on the vessel in the Red Sea. A Liberian representative at the London-based International Maritime Organization made the announcement after Yemen's Houthi rebels ended a lull in their campaign against shipping through the vital waterway. The details to follow.
An ongoing attack on a cargo vessel in the Red Sea has killed 2 people on Tuesday after Yemen's Houthis resumed the campaign against shipping in the vital waterway. The Eternity, a Liberian-flagged bulk carrier, has been badly damaged and under continuous attack since Monday in waters off Yemen. And the Liberian representative at the London-based International Maritime Organization said the 2 sailors had been killed, all but one of the 22 crew are Filipino. The U.S. Embassy in Yemen, in a statement on X, accused the Houthis of staging the attack on Eternity, describing as the most violent, yet accusing the group of undermining freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, the main goal of a May truce between Washington and the group. While the Iran-backed Houthis did not claim responsibility, it comes after the group struck another cargo ship, the Magic Seas, the first sea such action this year. The 2 incidents in quick succession raised fears of return to regular Houthis attack on a vital shipping route that previously carried about 12% of the global trade. They also came as the United States push for the fresh nuclear talks with Iran, the Houthis' powerful backer following the 12-day war with Israel. On Monday, the Houthis said that they used unnamed boats, missiles and drones against the Magic Seas, the first attack on a cargo vessel this year. All 22 people aboard the Greek-owned carrier were rescued on Monday. The Houthis said the vessel had sunk. The Houthis, who have controlled large parts of Yemen for more than a decade, began targeting Israel and ships in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden after the Gaza war broke out in October 2023. The attacks have forced many freight companies to detour around southern Africa to avoid the Red Sea, normally the fastest route between Asia and Europe.
The head of Libya's UN-backed government of national unity unveiled a plan to reduce the flow of migrants to the European Union in talks with the EU ministers on Tuesday. Libyan Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibah said a huge national campaign was going to be rolled out with the support of several friendly countries to combat the trafficking of human beings. Dbeibah was speaking at talks in Tripoli with the bloc's Commissioner for Internal Affairs and Migration, which were joined by the Interior Ministers of Italy and Malta and Greek Migration Minister. Libyan Interior Minister Imad Tarabulsi said Libya hosted between 3 and 4 million migrants who had entered the North African country illegally and whom they encouraged to leave. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said on Tuesday he believes Iran can resolve its differences with the United States through dialogue, but trust would be an issue after U.S. and Israeli attacks on his country. The Iranian leaders urged the U.S. President Donald Trump not to be drawn into war with Iran by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The details are in the following report.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian came under fire on Tuesday after voicing support for renewed talks with the United States, with critics accusing him of being too soft in the wake of last month's attacks on the country. Also, Pezeshkian said that Israel, which last month fought a 12-day war with Iran, had attempted to assassinate him. The Iranian leader accused Netanyahu of pursuing his own agenda of forever wars in the Middle East and urged the United States not to be dragged into it. He added that the U.S. administration should refrain from getting involved in a war that is not America's war, it is Netanyahu's war. Pezeshkian noted that Tehran no problem restarting nuclear talks provided that trust can be re-established between the two sides. The Iranian president highlighted that they see no problem in re-entering the negotiations as there was a condition for restarting the talks. Pezeshkian added that Iran would be open to U.S. investments should sanctions on Tehran be lifted, adding that there is no limitation and nothing preventing the U.S. investors to come to Iran and to make investments in the country. The Iranian leader warned that the U.S. has two ways in front of it for dealing with Iran and the region: peace or war. He added that U.S. President Trump is capable enough to guide the region towards peace and a brighter future and put Israel in its place or get into an endless pit or swamp. His remarks came less than a month after Israel launched its unprecedented June 13th bombing campaign against Iran, killing top military commanders and nuclear scientists.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday the United States would send additional weapons to Ukraine, triggering Russian criticism after Moscow claimed new gains in its grinding war against the neighbor. Trump's announcement to send weapons to Ukraine followed Washington saying last week that it was halting some weapons shipments to Kiev, leaving Ukrainian officials caught off guard and scrambling for clarity. The Kremlin warned that sending arms to Ukraine only serves to prolong the conflict a day after Trump's pledge for more weapons for Ukraine to defend itself. Trump has reportedly promised to immediately send 10 Patriot interceptors anti-missile systems to Ukraine, according to U.S. news website Axios. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte were greeted off the presidential plane at an airbase northwest of London by heir to the throne Prince William and his wife Catherine, Princess of Wales, on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Macron will have lunch with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and the two leaders will on Thursday co-host the 37th Franco-British Summit, where they are set to discuss opportunities to strengthen defense ties. The details to follow.
French President Emmanuel Macron received a warm and pop-filled welcome Tuesday from the UK King Charles III as he began a three-day state visit to Britain, the first by an EU head of the state since Brexit. Macron, accompanied by his wife Brigitte, hailed an important moment for the two nations after landing and heading straight for Windsor, west of London, to meet the British monarch. The French leader said they would address major challenges of time like security, defence, nuclear energy, space, innovation, artificial intelligence, migration and culture, adding that Paris and London were seeking to deepen their cooperation in concrete, effective and lasting way. During his visit, Macron will hold several meetings with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The discussions are expected to focus on aid to war-torn Ukraine and blustering defence spending, as well as joint efforts to stop the migrant from crossing the channel in small boats, a part of political issue in Britain. Calling the visit historic, Starmer's office said it would showcase the breadth of the existing relationship between Britain and France. The two leaders will dial into a meeting of the coalition on Thursday to discuss stepping up support for Ukraine and further increasing pressure on Russia. They will speak also to Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. After taking power in 2024, the British leader has been making good on his pledge to reset relations with European capitals following years of the Brexit-fueled tensions. Britain and France are spreading talks amongst a 30-nation coalition on how to support a possible ceasefire in Ukraine, including potentially deploying peacekeeping forces.
Hundreds of Spanish firefighters on Tuesday battled a forest fire stoked by fierce winds that had burned more than 3,000 hectares, with the authorities ordering 18,000 residents to stay at home. The Catalonia region's fire service said that more than 450 firefighters, backed by helicopters and planes, were deployed across a hilly 30 kilometers front in the northeastern province of Tarragona. The blaze had devoured an estimated 3,137 hectares, with the protected El Sports Natural Park representing about one-third of the total, according to Catalan Rangers. The blaze had gutted an isolated hillside home, which stood surrounded by scorched trees. Its roof collapsed. Firefighters said they were cautiously optimistic as they worked to stabilize the blaze and prevent it spreading further into the park. Volunteers on horseback and others with rescue dogs are combing river banks alongside authorities in Central Texas, searching for victims of catastrophic floods that have killed more than 100 people. Rescuers in inflatable motorboats also searched for bodies near an all-girls summer camp where 27 campers and counselors died after being swept away by floodwaters. The details to follow.
The death toll from catastrophic flooding in Texas rose to more than 100 on Tuesday as rescuers continued their grim search for people swept away by torrents of water. Among the dead were at least 27 girls and counselors who were staying at a youth summer camp on a river when disaster struck over the 4th of July holiday weekend. Forecasters have warned of more flooding as rain falls on saturated ground, complicating recovery efforts involving helicopters, boats, dogs, and some 1,750 personnel. U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed he planned to visit Texas on Friday as the White House slammed critics claiming his cuts to weather agencies had weakened warning systems. She said the National Weather Service, which the New York Times reported, had several key roles in Texas unfilled before the floods, issued timely and precise forecasts and warnings. Trump has described the floods that struck in the early hours of Friday as a 100-year catastrophe that nobody expected. The president, who previously said disaster relief should be handled at the state level, has signed a major disaster declaration, activating fresh federal funds and freeing up resources. At least 104 flood-related deaths were reported across central Texas. The toll includes 27 who had been staying at Camp Mystic, an all-girls Christian camp that was housing about 750 people when the floodwaters struck. Flash floods occur when the ground is unable to absorb torrential rainfall. Human-driven climate change has made extreme weather events such as floods, droughts, and heat waves more frequent and more intense in recent years.
Cairo Governor Ibrahim Sabir said on Tuesday Civil Protection Forces was able to put down a major fire that erupted in Ramses Telecommunications Center in Cairo a day earlier. The governor said the cooling down process was underway, adding that all injuries from the fires were mild cases of suffocation and had all received medical assistance and recovered. He gave his directives to form a technical committee to assess the effects of the fires and remove the debris after criminal investigation authorities finished their work on the site. The blaze began on Monday on the 7th floor of the historic 10-story telephone exchange in downtown Cairo, where thick black smoke was seen billowing from the area. Videos shared widely on social media showed smoke pouring from the upper floors of the building, visible from several kilometers away. The Ramses Exchange is a vital telecommunications hub and plays a central role in Egypt's internet and telephone infrastructure. Moving now to the economic and business sector, in which Minister of Finance Ahmed Kojok said that Egypt is looking forward to play a major role in the BRICS group regarding creating new solutions to deal with the global debt crisis. The finance minister added that Egypt is also looking forward to reforming the global monetary system and to create a more balanced, inclusive and fair economic framework for the emerging markets. He reiterated that the BRICS could play an important role in reshuffling the global economic structure to serve the interests of the emerging markets and developing countries. The minister's remarks were made during his participation in the official session of the finance ministers and central banks governors of the BRICS bloc, currently held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. European stock markets and the dollar strengthened Tuesday as countries fought to hammer out trade deals days before U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff deadline. Oil price rose even if OPEC and its allies agreed over the weekend to increase output more than expected. Stocks rose Tuesday as traders cautiously welcomed Donald Trump's extension of his tariff deadline and indication he could push it back further, though uncertainty over U.S. trade policy capped gains. While Wall Street 3 main indexes ended down, Asian markets mostly rose. Tokyo and Seoul advanced while there were also gains in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Wellington, Manila, Mumbai and Singapore. London, Paris and Frankfurt all rose at the open. Tokyo Nikkei 225 up to 0.3%, Hong Kong Hang Seng Index up to 0.8%, Shanghai Composite up to 0.7%, London FTSE 100 up to 0.1%, Euro and dollar up to $1.1735 from $1.171. Europe eked out small gains, but Wall Street was flat on Tuesday after U.S. President Donald Trump extended his tariff deadline and hinted at a further pushback. Meanwhile, the dollar firmed against other major currencies, with its index rising 0.34% to 97.2. The dollar reversed an earlier decline and rose 0.78% at 145.725 yen, reaching a one-week high. Meanwhile, the euro slipped 0.41% to $1.173, having rallied over 13% so far this year. And sterling weakened 0.08% to $1.364, while the dollar and the New Zealand dollar also lost 0.61% and 1.63% respectively. Oil on Tuesday shrugged off the impact of OPEC Plus hiking output more than expected for August, as well as concern about the potential impact of U.S. tariffs, with prices mostly reversing early loss as a tight physical market lent support. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies, a group known as OPEC Plus, agreed on Saturday to raise production by 548,000 barrels per day in August, more than the 411,000 ppd hikes they made for the earlier 3 months. Brent crude futures fell as low as $67.22 a barrel, but by 11:45 GMT were up 36 cents or 0.5% to $68.66. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $66.99, down 1 cent and up from an earlier low of $65.40. Brazil's president said Monday that emerging BRICS economies didn't want to live under an emperor after Donald Trump declared a 10% tariffs hike on members for their allegedly anti-American policies. The details to follow.
U.S. President Donald Trump threatened China, India and some of the world's fastest emerging economies with high import tariffs, hitting back at BRICS' criticism of his trade policies as the bloc meets. The 11-nation grouping, which also includes U.S. allies Brazil, Saudi Arabia and Indonesia, concluded a 2-day summit in Rio de Janeiro. BRICS leaders described Trump's stop-start tariff wars as indiscriminate, damaging and illegal, drawing a late-night rebuke from the U.S. president. Trump wrote on social media that any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff, and there would be no exceptions to this policy. BRICS members account for about half the world's population and 40% of global economic output. Conceived 2 decades ago as a forum for fast-growing economies, BRICS has come to be seen as a Chinese-driven effort to curb U.S. global influence. But it is a quickly expanding and often divergent grouping, bringing together Foes like Iran and Russia were some of Washington's closest allies in Latin America, the Middle East, Africa and Asia. Some U.S. allies inside the bloc had tried to blunt criticism of Trump by not mentioning him or the U.S. by name in their summit statement. Early in April, Trump threatened a slew of punitive duties before backing off in the face of a fierce market sell-off. Now he's threatening to impose unilateral levies on trading partners unless they reach deals by August the 1st, with BRICS nations seemingly faced with higher tariffs than planned.
U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled higher tariffs for Japan, South Korea and a dozen other countries in a push for new trade deals, but extended the deadline for the steeper levies to kick in until August. The details to follow.
U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled higher tariffs for Japan, South Korea and a dozen other countries in a push for new trade deals, but extended the deadline for the steeper levies to kick in until August. Trump issued similar letters to countries including Indonesia, Bangladesh, Thailand, South Africa and Malaysia, saying he would slap duties on their products ranging from 25% to 40%. These mark a step up from the 10% levy the president earlier imposed on almost all trading partners. But the starting date of August the 1st marks a delay in Trump's reimposition of higher duties, originally due to Wednesday. In near identically worded letters to Japanese and South Korean leaders, Trump said U.S. tariff hikes to 25% came as their trading relationships with Washington were unfortunately far from reciprocal. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said Sunday that he would not easily compromise in trade talks with Washington. Trump originally announced sweeping tariffs on world economies during what he called Liberation Day on April the 2nd, claiming the United States was being ripped off. Amid market turmoil, he then suspended higher duties affecting dozens of economies for 90 days, a deadline that would have expired on Wednesday. On Monday, Trump signed an order formally extending the Wednesday deadline, postponing it to August the 1st.
Welcome back. The World Bank said that Syria's gross domestic product is expected to grow modestly by 1% in 2025, following a contraction of 1.5% in 2024. The World Bank said in a statement that easing of sanctions provides some upside potential. However, progress remains limited as frozen assets and restricted access to international banking continue to hinder energy supply, foreign assistance, humanitarian support, and trade and investment. The European Union will seek to rebalance economic ties with China, demanding it eases market access for European firms and loosen export controls on rare earth at the summit this month. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said overcapacity concerns and China's support for Russia's war effort in Ukraine will also be table at the talks with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The details are in the following report.
The EU will seek to rebalance economic ties with China, demanding it eases market access for European firms and loosen export controls on rare earths. At a summit this month, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said overcapacity concerns and China's support for Russia's war efforts in Ukraine will also be on the table under talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Addressing the European Parliament in Strasbourg, von der Leyen said that Beijing was running to the largest trade surplus in the history of mankind exporting vast amounts of the EU while making it harder for European companies to do business in China. Beijing has sought to improve relations with the European Union as a counterweight to superpower rival the United States, but deep frictions remain over the economic relationship. The trade deficit between China and the EU was yawning of $357 billion in 2024. Brussels is worried that a manufacturing glut propelled by massive state set-aside could add it and result in a flood or cheap Chinese goods undercutting European firms. The Commission leader, who will travel to Beijing with European Council President Antonio Costa, said that the pair will seek to loosen export restrictions on rare earths, while Brussels also looks to developing alternative supply resources. The curbs have caused concern among businesses worldwide as China accounts for almost two-thirds of the rare earth mining production and 92% of the global refined output. The summit is scheduled to take place later on July 24th, 25th to mark the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and EU.
Now, dear viewers, moving to the exciting world of sports, in which Chelsea's young side are targeting a place in the final of the Club World Cup when they take on Fluminense in the last four on Tuesday, with the Brazilian team marshaled by former Blues defender Thiago Silva, who is still going strong at the age of 40. The details are in the following report.
Chelsea coach Enzo Maresca shrugged off concerns about playing in hot and humid mid-afternoon conditions on Tuesday. Club's World Cup semi-final against the Brazilian side Fluminense, for which the Blues will be without both Liam Delap and Levi Colli. Chelsea and Fluminense clash at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, just outside New York City at 19 GMT on Tuesday, and the heat could have a serious impact on the spectacle. Chelsea can welcome back midfielder Lanchpan Moises after he sat out of the Palmers tie due to the suspension, but striker Delap and the centre-back Colwill are both banned this time, while Romelu Lavie is not fit. Nicola Jackson, who was sent off against the Flamengo, is available. In youth singing, Joe Pedro is pushing for a starting attack. The Fluminense will be the third Brazilian opponents Chelsea have faced at the competition after they lost to Flamengo in the group stage and beat the Palmeiras in the quarter-finals. Fluminense are now flying the flag for the South America and the rest of the world as they complete the semi-final line to up alongside Chelsea, Real Madrid and Paris Saint-Germain, three of the last five UEFA Champions League winners. Renato Polypus said that he have enjoyed a fine tournament, holding Borussia Dortmund in the group stage, defeating Inter Milan in the last 16 and knocking out Al Hilal of Saudi Arabia in the quarter-finals. Polypus has called the Fluminense the ugly duckling of the tournament due to the enormous differences between the budget and those of the other three sides left in the United States.
Welcome back. Hong Kong football fans queued for hours to snap pictures of Cristiano Ronaldo's trophies and jerseys at an exhibition billed as the first of its kind outside the superstar's native Portugal. Visitors at the opening of the CR7 Life Museum Hong Kong at a luxury shopping mall posed next to life-sized statues of the former Manchester United and Real Madrid player, including one in mid-air celebration and another in traditional Saudi dress. Ronaldo signed a new 2-year contract with the Saudi Arabian club Al Nassr last month, calling it a new chapter in an Instagram post. Al Nassr are due to play in a pre-season tournament in Hong Kong next month. The 5-time Ballon d'Or winner Ronaldo will be greeting fans at the museum very soon with the 1,110 square meters exhibition, sending a strong message for everyone to achieve their dreams. Organizers have said the Hong Kong exhibition will run for a year before heading to mainland China. Former Croatia international Ivan Rakitic, who spent much of his career with Barcelona and Sevilla, announced his retirement from football at the age of 37. Rakitic wrote in a letter reflecting his career on social media that football gave him more than he ever dreamed of. It gave him friends, emotions, joy and tears. Beginning his career with Basel and later moved to Chalk, he played 106 times for Croatia and started his country's World Cup final loss to France in 2018. The former Croatian international was part of Barcelona's treble-winning side in 2015 and twice won the European League with Sevilla. Rakitic had a short spell with the Saudi club Al Shabab last year before one final season at Hajduk Split. Indiana Pacers guard Tyrese Haliburton will miss the entire 2025-2026 NBA season after suffering a torn right Achilles tendon in the NBA Finals. Haliburton was playing with a right calf strain when he went down in the first quarter of Indians' 103-91 loss to Oklahoma City in the title-deciding contest. Team President Kevin Pritchard said that he had no doubt that Haliburton will be back better than ever. Haliburton sparked the Pacers to their first NBA Finals since 2000, averaging 18.6 points, 9.2 assists, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.4 steals a game. Pritchard said that Pacers haven't given up on being an NBA contender, but realized they will lack something special until Haliburton returns from June 23 surgery. Haliburton has said he would take the chance again and play in the winner-take-all last game of the NBA Finals despite suffering the injury. But Pritchard said he didn't feel the same. The Pacers have also lost another key member of the run to the finals as center Miles Turner signed a 4-year free agent deal with Milwaukee. Daniel Brown held on to win his second European Tour title at the BMW International Open in Munich, edging out fellow Englishman Jordan Smith by 2 shots. The world number 170, who led by 1 stroke overnight, carded a final round 66 to finish on 22 under par for the tournament. The details are in the following report.
English golfer Daniel Brown was in tears after going through an out-of-body experience in winning the BMW International Open by 2 strokes days after the death of a close friend. The number 170 ranked Brown shot a bogey-free 6 under 66 in the final round to capture his second European Tour title after the ISPS Honda World Invitational in 2023. After making his 6th and final birdie of the day at the par -5 18th, Brown walked off the green and started to cry. Brown said that he lost a friend at home last weekend before posing and holding back more tears and dedicating his win for his friend. Brown said that was his motivation to win at Golf Club Echenorid. He added that he wasn't really too sure what happened, but all day really was like an out-of-body experience. Brown started the day with a 1-shot lead over countryman Jordan Smith, birdied 4 of his first 6 holes and picked up 2 more birdies, coming home to finish on the 22 under par for the week. The 30-year-old Brown had not had a top 10 finish since February at the Qatar Masters. Smith shot 67 and was alone in second place.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our episode today in Newsroom Live program. This was Sarah Slim. Thank you for watching.